The ideas expressed in City Club forums are those of the speakers and not of the City Club of Cleveland, IdeaStream Public Media, or their sponsors. Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream Public Media are made possible by PNC and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland, Incorporated.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland, where we are devoted to conversations of consequence that help democracy thrive. It's Friday, July 18th, and I'm Tony Coyne, the president and managing partner of Mansard Gavin, and I'm pleased to introduce today's forum. Right now, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment in our nation's political landscape, one where distrust and division have shaped public perception. The government's role in addressing our community's most pressing and complex challenges is changing, and topics like housing, transportation, social equity are all part of a growing national conversation and often contentious. At the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy, they believe land is more than just physical space. It's a powerful tool for change. Through fact-based research, education, and advocacy, the Institute explores creative, practical ways to use and steward land to address the economic and social environmental issues shaping our future. Today, we're joined by Christine McIntosh, Planning Manager for the City of Euclid, Gillian Prater-Lee, Program Assistant at Local Initiative Support Corporation, we often know as LISC, and our moderator, George McCarthy, the president and CEO of the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy. They will be talking about the intersection of land, leadership, policy, and people, and how investing in civic trust and engagement can lead to meaningful progress. If you'd like to text a question to our speakers, please text it to 330-541-5794. That's 330-541-5794. And the City Club staff will try to work it into the program. Now, members and friends of the City Club of Cleveland, please join me in welcoming Christine McIntosh, Gillian Prater-Lee, and George McCarthy.
Well, thank you so much, Tony. And in full disclosure, Tony was a long-term board member of the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy, and we really enjoyed and learned a lot from his guidance. So thank you so much, Tony. All right, so the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy, we work all over the world, and our primary audience is government. We work with local, state, provincial, and national governments all over the world, telling them, helping them find ways to use land to address other big issues like, I don't know, the climate crisis or how to protect habitat for endangered species, the little things. And so for us, what we've been observing, particularly in the United States, but really all over the world, is a disturbing trend in which we're really pressing our local governments to do very much more with very much less. So we hope to take you on a little journey today to really, depress the hell out of you, and then maybe show you some light at the end of the tunnel. So I'm the depressing one, and to my left is our leading light. Okay, so, but just to set the stage, I just want to talk to you a little bit about a perfect storm that we're facing right now, and it unfolds in three pieces, right? In the first piece, we've inherited decades of underinvestment in infrastructure in the United States. Right now, the 2025 report card on America's infrastructure that's produced every 4 years by the American Society of Civil Engineers grades our national infrastructure at a C. Now, as it turns out, that's the highest grade we've gotten in about, almost since they've started using that grading system, right? The last time since 1998. So in 2021, we got a C minus, or doing a little bit better. And in 2017, we got a D+, right? And they look at everything from bridges and roads and tunnels and everything to say, how are we doing and what could we do better? And one of the things that gives me pause is that our recent federal austerity is going to harm our ability to continue to improve our infrastructure. So going up from a D+ to a C- to a C, I have a feeling 4 years from now we're going to be looking at a lower grade unless we inflate the grades. Then, of course, we have an accelerating climate crisis. And so this accelerating climate crisis, which is layered on top of infrastructure that's stressed more and more and more, is kind of expressed. I'll give you a couple of ways to think about it, right? So the average number of billion-dollar disasters that we've seen in the United States has increased from 9 events per year between 1980 and 2024 to 23 events per year more recently. Another way to think about it was, since the 1980s, the average length of time between billion-dollar disasters was 82 days. And this year and in future years, which is probably going to be worse, it's 19 days between billion-dollar disasters in our country. That's 1 every 3 weeks, or less than 3 weeks. This is terrifying. If you're not terrified, I'm going to continue to terrify you. So, but once again, austerity at the federal level imperils that. And just go look at Texas and our inability to adequately kind of respond to those storms. But the thing that we really want to talk about today, and one of the things that is really concerning, is the fact that we've shifted lots and lots of responsibility to address the kinds of challenges we're talking about from the federal to the state and to the local levels. And we've done that without a commensurate shift of resources to do it. But to add to that, we're now faced with what we're calling the public sector workforce crisis, in which staffing challenges are hitting us in the public sector locally everywhere. So I'll give you just another couple of depressing statistics. So since today, right now, the Bureau of Labor Statistics estimates we're almost 500,000 jobs lower than we were pre-pandemic in terms of public employment. And they've noted that there's critical vacancies at all levels of public employment, but in particular public safety, where law enforcement agencies are now operating at about 91% of authorized staffing. In an Alexa Poll survey, we found that 87% of police and 94% of firefighters and 86% of EMS professionals reported staffing shortages. Just last Sunday in Fall River, Massachusetts, they had a fire that killed 10 people. And the conclusion that the city drew was that it was mostly attributable to understaffing in their police department. So they invested another $1.5 million to increase staffing for their fire department, for their response. And then we have an aging workforce where about half of the workers that work in the public sector are over 45 years old. And we're facing now the retirement of baby boomers like me who are leaving the public sector workforce in what we call a silver tsunami. And what is the problem with that? Well, the problem with that is we have no plan. There's no plan to kind of backfill the loss of this talent and the needed manpower, person power that we have at the local level to do things like respond to flash floods in Texas or to a building fire in Fall River, Massachusetts. So what are we supposed to do about that? What are the strategies to take care of that? Well, so I'm going to give you 3, and we're going to talk a little bit how those 3 are kind of playing out here locally, right? So one is, of course, to build college to public service pipelines. And that's really to find ways to attract people who want to work in the public service and find economical ways to get them educated, trained, and ready to go in the public service with specialized degrees, internships, and streamlined hiring processes so that they can actually get jobs. Desirable jobs in many cases where people actually have, good lifelong career prospects and hopefully decent retirement plans, right? We have to improve retention. And the biggest complaint of public workers is the lack of flexibility in work arrangements. We have to find ways to make work a little bit more accommodating to people who now are seeing the rest of the workforce work from home 3 days a week, or work from home all the time and go live, in Hawaii while they kind of work in Cleveland, right? Then we need to modernize systems. And the reason we need to modernize systems is we need to find ways to do more with less. And it's just one of those realities we have to face. And luckily, technology's on our side there. But we got to invest in those technology tools. Find ways to automate processes that were very, very time-consuming for public workers, right? Or we need to expand the use of shared services among different levels of the public sector, different townships, municipalities in a municipal area. Why can't we share back office services? At breakfast today, Tony was telling me there's 56 jurisdictions in the Better Cleveland area. 56 jurisdictions that all have their own, their own back office for their school system. They have their own back office for their mayor's office, their city councils. There's a lot of duplication of services that could actually be found we could make kind of more efficient. Anyway, the bottom line is we need to do things differently, and we need to find ways to do things differently. And one of the ways that we're trying to do things differently at the Lincoln Institute, in collaboration with our partner university, Claremont Lincoln University, is build capacity in the public and civic sectors nationally. Finding ways to identify people who really want to work in the public sector and get them degrees, get them trained, and get them ready to actually do things that will matter on the ground in the places that they come from. So today we have two representatives of this new effort, which is called the Lincoln Vibrant Communities Program. So, as you know, as Tony mentioned, Christine McIntosh is the planning manager at the City of Euclid. She served a 5-year term as Euclid Ward 6 council person, and she acted as a liaison between the city and its residents. Additionally, Christine has experience as an urban programs coordinator at the nonprofit Western Reserve Land Conservancy. She's held numerous management and marketing roles in the private sector, and Christine is an inaugural fellow of the Lincoln Vibrant Communities Program and is completing an MPA at Cleveland State University. So welcome, Christine.
Thank you.
And we have Gillian Prater-Lee. Gillian is a program assistant at the LISC Cleveland office. LISC, as Tony mentioned, is the Local Initiatives Support Corporation. Thank you. Supporting affordable housing lending and homeownership preservation programs. Gillian previously worked at the City of Cleveland, the Department of Community Development, managing homeless services and rental assistance grants, and was a tenant organizer with the Northeast Ohio Coalition for the Homeless. Gillian is also an inaugural fellow of the Lincoln Vibrant Communities Program and earned an MA in Human Geography at Penn State. All right, Penn State. I know there's a little bit of cross-state rivalry maybe, but we'll let that go. Okay. But Gillian, so let's start with you. You had a long career in the private, sorry.
That's Christine.
That's Christine. Gillian, tell us a little bit about Lincoln Vibrant Communities and what you're hoping to get out of joining that endeavor.
For sure. So the Lincoln Vibrant Communities Fellowship, like Max said, is a partnership between the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy and Claremont Lincoln University to help develop public sector leadership. So we completed a 24-week fellowship, mostly asynchronously and remote, but with a kickoff and wrap up kind of convening in Chicago. And the program is focused on leadership development and learning about cutting edge initiatives in land policy. And at the end, you earn a certificate in leadership studies from Claremont Lincoln that you can transfer to a different degree program or continue on at Claremont Lincoln. So as an early career professional with an academic background coming from my master's program, I was interested in developing my leadership skills to more effectively get stuff done in the public sector, basically. And I knew about the cutting edge research from the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy, so I was really excited when I saw the fellowship come out and for the opportunity to learn from the staff at Lincoln Institute as well as Claremont Lincoln. I was also really excited about the opportunity to develop a professional network of people who are doing similar work across the country. So we had peers in the program from Montana and California and, wherever, working for local governments or nonprofits as consultants in some cases, doing this sort of work. So just a kind of peer-to-peer knowledge sharing was something I was really excited about. And I was just really excited that the program sees local government as a source for positive change. I think so often we can kind of become jaded or about local government, but I was like really excited about that opportunity. And while I don't currently work for the government or for the city, the skills and tools that I learned in the fellowship I feel like are universal and definitely applicable to my current work at LISC.
One of the things we think about when we think about the network of folks that everybody that comes to the program gets introduced to and is hope to be a permanent part of this growing network of problem solvers around the United States. But the other way we think about it is it's like group therapy, right? Because for a lot of people that work in the places they work, they're the only person in the place that does that job. And so they don't have peers that they can talk to, right? One of the places that we've recruited someone from is from a city in Maine that has about 700 people population, right? And there's also people from New York City with millions of people. But if you come from a small city with 700 people, the likelihood that you're going to have additional planning help around is unlikely, and your ability to kind of dig in and take on a challenge and look for other resources is going to be limited to whatever you can do on Google, right? But in this case, what we have is actually live people on the other end who you can just reach out to and you can talk about whatever the challenges you're facing, and you're likely to find someone who's faced that challenge and somehow got some ideas about what you can do. Okay, so Christine. Mm-hmm. All right, so one of the things about working in the public sector is that we don't do a great job of praising public sector workers, right? One of the things that we've been seeing for the last, I don't know, whether at least the last 40 years of my life is mostly attacks on the public sector, acting as if the government is inefficient and unable to do the work, and the private sector is always the answer, right? Well, you were in the private sector. You came from the private sector, and somehow you decided to leave the private sector and come back and work in the public sector. What the hell were you thinking, right? So tell us, why did you do that, and what do you hope to now get out of this network of problem solvers and the training you're going to get from the Vibrant Communities program?
Sure. So my journey to public service is a bit unorthodox. As Mac mentioned, I worked in the private sector for a long time, working for entrepreneurs. That was my kind of college experience, learning experience in the workforce. Private sector has its fair share of issues as well. But it was only until I moved to Euclid, Ohio, from the near west neighborhoods in Cleveland after renting, buying a house, becoming embedded into the community, when I started to just recognize that I was a stakeholder in my community, began volunteering. One of my first ventures into public service, I suppose, was volunteering for our comprehensive planning process that the county was leading on and being a steering committee member for that. I was a new resident in Euclid and wrote to the mayor and said that I was new, I had fresh ideas, and I wanted to make a difference somehow. From there, I ended up being approached when there was a vacancy on city council and just questioned, would this be something that I was interested in? And I said, sure, why not? I'll try it. And ended up going through an long interview process, being appointed to city council, and then winning an election. I served 5 years on Euclid City Council. It's one of my greatest achievements. And from there, recognized that I had a passion for community development, for planning, for talking with friends and neighbors and residents of a different neighborhood, networking. And so when a vacancy in the planning division popped up, I jumped at the chance to apply, and thankfully the leaders and directors and leadership at the city welcomed me. And I've been in this role, planning manager, for 2.5 years. So it's very rewarding to be able to make a difference in your community. I work on fun projects like parks and playgrounds and streetscapes and putting benches and bike racks in, and then thinking a little bit more forward about where is Euclid going? How can we embrace technology? How can we maintain our innovation and try to be leaders moving forward? So the Lincoln Vibrant Communities Program, I will definitely thank and give a lot of gratitude to my mayor, Kirsten Holtheimer-Gale. She was the one who sent the opportunity to me and said that, you should consider doing this. I did, and was really, really grateful to be one of the inaugural members and be able to learn from Gillian and so many others in the country, across the country.
So from what I've been told, Gillian's a frequent user of your bike racks, right? So in fact, you're using the bike rack outside today, which isn't in Euclid, but you're using it. So Gillian, almost everywhere we work in the United States, there is a seemingly unassailable affordable housing problem, challenge. And it seems that Cleveland hasn't avoided that kind of challenge. And I'm wondering, one of your programs at LISC is to focus on that, but I'm wondering just how you're working across sector to kind of deal with that affordable housing challenge and how you're working with the city and other partners to take that on.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so clearly there's a crisis in affordable housing in Cleveland. Cleveland is one of the places where rents are rising the fastest in the country at this point, and that coupled with low wages and incomes creates a crisis in affordable housing. We're also dealing with deferred maintenance in our aging housing stock, a rise in absentee landlords, and pervasive lead issues in our housing. So LISC is working with partners to help address these issues. So in March, we launched the Cleveland Housing Investment Fund, which is raising $100 million to support the development of 2,500 to 3,000 units of housing across the city of Cleveland, thanks to initial support from the city and Key Bank. The fund has a focus on investment in neighborhoods that haven't historically received this sort of investment, so like middle and opportunity neighborhoods, developing affordable and mixed income housing, and working with local developers, emerging developers who haven't historically had access to that sort of capital to get their projects off the ground. Additionally, we have some housing preservation programs. So we have a home repair program that will launch shortly, and an heirs property program to address issues when the title for property isn't transferred clearly among passing of a homeowner. And so these are examples of programs where we're able to work through partners to help preserve home ownership between generations and address these sorts of maintenance issues that a homeowner might not be able to afford. And these are examples of when LISC is able to bring national resources and expertise to the local market to meet the needs of the local housing market. And beyond housing, we really kind of try and take a holistic approach to community development. So we work on things like financial stability, childcare, workforce development, and small business development, which we see as all parts of building a thriving local economy where people can access financial resources, develop a small business, and live in quality, affordable housing.
So Gillian mentioned this issue of heirs property, and this is a kind of interesting, this is a topic we've dug into recently at the Lincoln Institute. Originally, we thought that the heirs property problem was a problem in the rural South, where rural farmers who had been there working for generations, the family leader would die off, and then there would be multiple heirs, and then they wouldn't really transfer title, and then they would just continue to farm, and then those heirs would have additional heirs, and then eventually you'd have what you call a fractionated title, where there might be one property with 50 people with a legitimate claim to the ownership of that property. And so that's what we thought was the problem. Well, as it turns out, it's a gigantic urban problem too, and we didn't even know it. And so as we started to dig into the problem, and it's sometimes not called heirs property, sometimes it's just called cloudy title, or disputed title, or whatever. And what it is very often the case where someone dies without a will, intestate, and then they don't transfer the property, and no one records the transfer of the ownership. Now, you think that would be easily resolved. Someone just go in, tell people I've been living there and paying property taxes all this time, just give me title, but it's not quite that easy. And what's even worse is that it usually doesn't come to light until something bad happens. And so when something bad happens, it's like when Hurricane Katrina hits New Orleans, and then you find out that a significant share of the families living in the lower Ninth Ward have cloudy title because they were living in grandmother's house and grandma died 15 years ago and nobody got the deed. And if you don't have the deed, if you can't claim to be a rightful owner, you're not eligible for emergency assistance. So FEMA won't help you, right? And so we found that in New Orleans, but you know where else we found it? We found it in Maui. So when Lahaina burned down, same problem, because there were lots of families where the generational transfer of the asset happened without generational transfer of the paperwork, right? And then just this year we found out there was a big problem in Altadena, California, in LA County, when LA burned down. And Altadena, once again, a historically ethnic community with long-standing ownership of people who've just passed ownership on for generations, and no access to help when their homes burn down, and no idea how they're going to figure that out. And so one of the things we're doing is finding strategies for folks who have other means of establishing that they're rightful residents to be able to qualify for some kind of assistance by being able to produce paperwork like power bills and property tax records and stuff. And so then working with them to find ways to resolve the deed problem, but at least get them some assistance when they're the victim of an emergency. All right, sorry for that departure. We'll get back to more important things, right? So, so Christine, I mentioned these billion-dollar disasters going on all over the place. We've seen 3 of them in the last 3 weeks, right? So, but Lake Erie hasn't been spared from the impacts of the climate crisis. And I wonder if you could talk a minute about what you're doing in Euclid to build community resilience and preserve the lakefront.
I'd love to.
Yeah.
The city of Euclid has been an innovator along the shores of Lake Erie. We have a 3/4-mile lakefront trail that was constructed through a public-private partnership. This is a decades-long vision, a $15 million vision to mitigate shoreline erosion, protect private property, and then open up the shoreline to the public. So we worked with over 100 property owners, usually through a homeowner association. So a number of property owners within that association who all had to sign off, join the effort, sign easements, which are in place in perpetuity to open up the lakeshore. So we have the Euclid Waterfront Improvement Plan that was completed in 2022. That's a 3/4-mile long asphalt shared use path along Lake Erie, starting from Sims Park, and it terminates at our phase 3 of the project, which was Senator Kenny Yuko Park. That was one project that when I came aboard was able to work on as the project manager and see to fruition. It is just a short trail extension that brings you up to Lakeshore Boulevard. So you could theoretically take a loop along the shoreline and then up to the street level into your neighborhood and even cross through into other neighborhoods, south of Lake Erie. So what Euclid's really trying to do is maximize our resiliency. When we were planning this trail project, as I mentioned, it was decades long. The idea came through in probably the 1980s to do something like this. Never thought it could happen, but it did. And it's been a driver of economic development, higher property values, more connectivity with the trail network. We're actively trying to connect other neighborhoods in Euclid to the south, south of the highway that divides us, to try to get folks who live in various areas along our 11 square miles. Euclid is pretty big and has a lot of barriers to get to the lake. So what we're trying to actively work on are trail connections. So we're doing that. We just completed a comprehensive plan update for Sims Park, which is over 35 acres of, for the most part, naturalized park space that comes up along Lakeshore Boulevard. Kind of improve that, modernize it so it matches all of the rest of our improvements. So going through connectivity studies for trails. We're also working with Cuyahoga County and developing a pilot microgrid project in our industrial core. So again, striking upon that innovation that Euclid's known for, and working to provide resilience to really our core manufacturing base. They are, outside of our residents, the backbone of our economy in Euclid. So making sure that when they experience issues with the traditional power grid, that the city is equipped, has the right partners at the table, has a collaborative spirit in trying to find those solutions.
So I want to underline a couple of things in the story you told, because one of the things that I think a lot of people don't appreciate is the fact that, number one, there was very little access to the lakefront before this project started. Number two, you had all these private landowners who were looking at their property with significant fear of erosion because of the rising level of the lake and the increased intensity of storms. And the likelihood that any individual landowner was going to be able to do anything was basically zero, right? So who could actually find a way to align the interests of all these different landowners, the city itself, right? And hopefully, if you're successful, help to contribute to a lakefront access that will extend from Ashtabula to Toledo, right?
That's the dream.
That's the dream, right? But see, the thing is that it never would have happened without public intervention, public sector intervention, because who else is there? And with the right kind of civic and public and private partners, right?
That's right. So the city fields, and this is probably every city, fields questions, concerns, week after week, day after day, from residents, stakeholders, business owners, employees, about what the city can support for them. What challenge are they facing? How is the city going to step in and help? A lot of the times we can't. We're very limited on what we can do for a number of issues. Private property rights, or limited capacity with the workforce, and pressing issues, other priorities, and trying to juggle all of that. But this was an example, both the waterfront improvements plan and the microgrid, where we fielded those concerns and we got a team together. Maybe we didn't lead on it necessarily, but it came together. And we are addressing those issues, and we're doing so fairly quickly. The microgrid project is, County Council just authorized full engineering for the project. It is slated for completion in operation in 2027. We've been working on that for a couple years now. It started off as just a pipe dream, and it's now going into engineering.
Thanks. All right, so we're about to begin the audience Q&A, and for our live stream and radio audience, I'm George McCarthy, President and CEO of Lincoln Institute of Land Policy, and the moderator for today's conversation. I am joined by Christine McIntosh, Planning Manager and Development Coordinator at the City of Euclid, and Gillian Prater-Lee, Program Assistant at Local Initiative Support Corporation, LISC of Cleveland. We're talking about the need to invest in leadership, policy, and communities that are defined by trust, civic engagement, and positive change. We welcome questions from everyone, City Club members sitting here, guests, and those joining via our live stream at cityclub.org or live broadcast at 89.7 WKSU Idea Stream Public Media. A reminder to keep your questions short, to the point, actually a question, right? And I'll ask you if there's a question if you go on too long, don't worry. So we can get as many questions as possible. And for those of you either in the audience or watching or listening, if you'd like to text a question, please text it to 330-541-5794. That's 330-541-5794. And City Club staff will try to work it into the program.
Chris Thompson, my question's for Christine. George has done a good job of making us depressed, as he promised. He referenced that there's been a long history of what you might just call anti-governance sentiment in our country. Most of it's been focused on the national level, some on the state. What's the climate like for you local officials? When you say, hi, I'm here from the government and I'm here to help, what kind of response do you get?
Thank you for your question. I have been lucky in my experience that I find most people who reach out, this was when I was on city council, although some of the questions were a little tougher, I would say, then. You're in the hot seat when you're an elected official, for sure. But most people are very gracious, and they're looking for some question to be answered, and even if you don't have the answer or the right partner or program or reference that they can look to, you're at least listening to them. So on the flip side, there is also a culture that is not face-to-face in person, that is very challenging if you're in a leadership role, heavy scrutiny, a lot of ignorance as to how government functions and what we're able to do and what we can't do. So there's a little bit of both, but for the most part, I would say that I've had a positive experience if you can cut through some of the online comments or just criticisms, which you're never going to get away from, and most of it is just coming from a lack of knowing what the true scenario is on the ground and how we work in government.
So Gillian, you jumped ship from the government to the civic sector, not to the for-profit sector, but so what motivated that shift, and would you consider coming back to government another time?
Yeah, I'd definitely be open to it. I mean, so I was working at the city in the community development department, and you'd hear things about this investment fund that was happening, that was about to launch, and I was just like, that is something I'm really excited about and something I'd really be interested in being a part of. And I think working at LISC, at the national organization, being able to learn from peers in that way in different places was something that was very interesting to me. As someone who has a really academic background, I'm always trying to learn new things. I was really excited about that part of LISC. But yeah, I'd definitely be open to working back in local government. Yeah.
And one of the things that I like to remind people when I travel all over the world and talk about the role of government is that a lot of people don't appreciate the fact that local government is the one that's responsible for delivering your quality of life. And unfortunately, most people couldn't even pick out their local government in a police lineup.
It's true.
And so the only time they notice local government is in its absence. So when they forget to, or they're not able to plow the roads, or something else goes wrong, right? And then all of a sudden, local government is noticed, but it's not noticed in the right way. Or they're noticed when you sit in line at the DMV waiting to renew your driver's license, right? And you think about how inefficient government is. But everybody misses all the invisible ways that government actually does all the things that we take for granted. And our lack of civic education doesn't do us any favors because we don't even really know what the processes are that are going on behind us. And all we do is get angry when we pay our property taxes, right? So we have a question over here.
Yes, this is a text question. With elected officials, especially at the federal level, disparaging public service, what can we do to restore and protect the importance of credibility of working in the public sector?
Great question. I would say first, make sure that you're educated about how government works. So if you don't know something, start to do a little bit of background research. But if you don't know or you don't have the connectivity to the answers, reach out and ask questions before making demands, I suppose. But really, I mean, that's what we do at City Hall, at least in Euclid, all day, every day, is answer questions and try to educate on what we're capable of doing, what we're legally able to do, and how you might be able to, find your own path forward without the assistance of government. But of course, we're very compassionate people as well, and so we're always trying to find some partnership or opportunity that they can tap into as well. And another thing, and I hear this often, that public servants, public service is a thankless job. I disagree. I get thanked a lot. And I think it helps that I live in Euclid, I work in Euclid, I serve in Euclid. And so I see my neighbors, I view everyone, regardless of the neighborhood you live in Euclid, as my neighbor. And if you can make that connection, then I think that just takes everything down a notch, and you can be more open.
Any ideas in this, Gillian, how we can make people love local government again?
I mean, I think by delivering results for community is a way. I think there are some rightful criticisms that there's been initiatives that have failed that haven't followed through. You have a plan and you don't act on it. You know, like I think as a community member, like it's kind of fair to be critical of that happening. So I think it's by demonstrating results for community as well. So one thing that's just kind of coming to mind was when I was working at the city, I was working on the Home for Every Neighbor initiative, which is an initiative to get people from unsheltered homelessness directly into housing. And I was very skeptical when I started. You know, it was a very ambitious program, and to be able to deliver on that. And I think the city's been able to see that program through and get over 100, and I think it's over 150 individuals housed just over the first 6 months, 12 months. I'm not quite sure of the numbers. But as we can have programs like that that are successful, or as we can get this partnership with the city for the CHIF to be successful, things like this, we can demonstrate, you know, that sort of success to community.
And certainly that's one of the predicates of the Vibrant Communities program, because in the end, what we're hoping is things actually happen and then stories can be told. And one of the things that, you know, governments don't have an advertising budget generally, or not a big one. They have PSAs around or something, right? But so people don't get to appreciate what is actually delivered, right? And that's why, so they only notice when it's not there, right? And so I don't know how we can kind of reinforce for folks that, you know, there is a quid pro quo, right? You pay your property taxes and you expect things to be delivered, but frankly, those things generally get delivered, and we just take them for granted. And so, you know, I don't know, can we get over our sense of entitlement and start to understand just how good we have it? Because, I mean, we carry ourselves around as if, I don't know, everything's going to hell. But actually, we live pretty well in this country. And part of living pretty well is everything that's delivered to us at our door by our local government. So what do you got?
Hi, my name is Carrie Grace. I'm the CEO and founder of Grace Education Institute. Obviously, on the education side, I do have two questions. The first question is, we talk a lot about collaboration, and obviously there's a high need for collaboration. And I was just wondering if there are any plans, or there has ever been thought given to how we're incorporating our education system into the problems that we're trying to solve in the future. So what I mean by that is curriculum development, staff training, all of that. How are we collaborating? And have we thought about that aspect when we're talking about some of these bigger issues now that they have been established? And then my second question is, in addition to my role at the Institute, I am also a firefighter, EMT, for North Randall. And when you said sharing resources, I'm assuming you mean like mutual aid. Into that, is there a plan? At North Randall, we do provide mutual aid for our surrounding cities. Is there a plan or an idea of how that can happen more efficiently on a broader scale?
I'll tell you, the answer to that second question is you got to come to the Lincoln Vibrant Communities program and make that happen, right? and we will help you, right, if you come, all right? But do you have a...
Yeah, I think that is, that would be one step, is talking with peers in other communities and looking at case studies. And that was one huge benefit of being in the Vibrant Communities program, the fellowship program, is having the access to the Lincoln Institute's research, data, case studies, even the mayor's desk newsletters that we were fed. So much content and inspiration that you could just, you know, take that and then look into what is this community doing? public servants also really want to talk to each other. So if I got a phone call from someone in a different community, I would probably spend the whole afternoon chatting with them about it, or at least offer up to get coffee or lunch or something and just go over things. In Euclid, we do have mutual aid as well, so there is regionalism in that. We have a few shared services, and implementing some of that was very controversial for our residents because they felt like it was going to become a deficiency in the level of service and quality. But for some aspects, that has not been the case. As far as collaborating and incorporating education, one of my big dreams is to get some of our youth, some of Euclid's youth involved in our department's planning. So I've been making regular visits to Euclid High School and talking with the junior ambassadors there, and always have a line out to the principal and superintendents and Board of Education to try to get them to get involved in our planning processes, which we'll hold a public meeting about a park project, and I can give you the median age, and it is not 14 years old, or even 8 years old, for sure. So how do we get youth to feel like this is a place that they live in, that they are invested in, that they have a role in, and can help shape the future of the community? So I've been trying to make connections and partnerships every day with some of that. Our Euclid High School program, they have 1 million career tech programs. They are separate from the city. They're their own school district, Euclid City Schools, but they have a number of career tech programs, including construction trades. So we're trying to work through how can they build more projects that are in our public spaces, so then they feel that they're a part of it.
So Gillian, you're trying to raise $100 million, build 3,000 homes in Cleveland, right? You're not doing it alone. So what can you say about kind of partners and collaboration and how you're going to get that done? Right?
Yeah, so certainly our work at LISC, we can't do it alone. We are we're an intermediary. So that means we work through our partners on the ground to deliver grants, loans, equity, and capacity building support to local communities. So whether it's supporting emerging developers, working through their financials and pro formas and all these sorts of things, or working with CDCs to understand the housing needs in their footprint, collaborating with Cases Legal Clinic on these tangled title cases that we were talking about. We work closely and collaboratively with the local public sector and civic sector to get these things done. Yeah.
One thing about schools, and one thing that a lot of people don't appreciate around the country, is how much land schools have at their disposal. And one of the things we've been tracking at the Lincoln Institute is what land is available locally that is owned by the government that could be deployed for other purposes like the building of affordable housing. And we've been mapping it out. And so in the fall, we're going to launch a campaign, a national campaign around the responsible and effective use of public land. But one of the main kind of players in that are going to be schools, transit authorities, and local governments. And most of the local land that's desirable to build in cities, it might be surface parking lots or something that are owned by the government. We need to figure out the right strategies to use those effectively and to make the right use of those public resources. So, stay tuned and keep us on your mailing list, or stay on our mailing list so you can get involved. So CMSD is?
Cleveland.
They were talking about how their Brighter Futures initiative they're looking for partners to be able to develop the land after those schools are shut down as schools. So I think that, to my point, is like, how are we collaborating more effectively and efficiently with educational systems to really guide a lot of the change that we need to see happen.
So if you refer to Merriam-Webster and you look at the second definition of collaboration in Merriam-Webster, you'll see that it's cooperation with the enemy once they've occupied your land, right? And so, in this case, collaboration can be a terrifying thought because now you're giving up, that you're asked to close schools and give up the land, and now they want the land. And how much autonomy, how much say are you going to have over the use of the land? So let's make sure it's the first definition of collaboration and not the second, right? Yeah.
And I think there's also a lot of, speaking of partnerships, I worked at the Western Reserve Land Conservancy, and one of our programs is redeveloping vacant land in that exact scenario. Working on projects in Huff currently, they are working on expanding parks and green space on a former school lot. In Euclid, we have a number of old elementary school sites, long demolished, that we're eyeing up redevelopment for. And we have a lot of ideas, maybe not a lot of developers at the table, but residents see that land as public, and there's a common sentiment that it should remain in the public realm. So how do you balance revenue generation from maybe land sales and developer agreements with also public benefit?
Another question? Yeah.
This is a text question. You mentioned the loss of ownership through generations in a family, but what is the risk we face with so many out-of-state and international landlords? They sit on properties and land without development and can block the community projects. Is there an understanding of how much of Cleveland is actually owned by Clevelanders?
Come on, you guys were there last year. What'd you learn from our session here at the City Club last year?
Last year, yeah. I mean, it's definitely a huge problem, the kind of buying up of property in Cleveland by bad actors, really, in the market. And we know that can lead to deferred maintenance issues, all sorts of issues, absentee landlords, these sorts of things. And I'll plug a couple things. I know the city has their Residents First program, which is working on requiring property owners to have a local agent in charge to be able to kind of bring to court and exercise those, to hold someone accountable in those sorts of situations. And then the second thing I would mention is a Lincoln Institute of Land Policy program called Who Owns America that looks at ownership. It's able to look at ownership patterns across the country and really identify who's behind that LLC that owns all these properties on the block and you don't know who it is, and layer that in with things like housing code violations and just different kind of housing market trends to really understand what's going on in the local housing market.
Yeah, so we talked about that across the street last year, about this time last year. And so I don't know if you remember, but when we showed the maps of what was actually going on in Cuyahoga County, it's actually terrifying. One of the things that a lot of people don't appreciate that today in the United States, 25% of the single-family housing stock is owned by owned by investors. They could be mom-and-pop landlords, or they could be institutional investors. But as part of our Who Owns America program, where we're actually tracking who owns what, and we're going through the corporate veils to figure out where the source of capital is, we've got about 15 different policy ideas about how jurisdictions can get ahead of outside investors buying up their housing stock. Because the housing stock they're buying up is all the starter homes. And how are we going to get the next generation of homeowners if there's no homes for them to buy? Well, I can see there's some stirring going on here. Tony, is it time to call a close to this session? Oh, okay. Well, all right, I'm going to hand it over to Tony Coyne to bring us home, huh?
Thank you very much to Christine McIntosh, Gillian Prater-Lee, and George McCarthy for joining us today at the City Club. We appreciate all of your conversation. Forums like this one are made possible thanks to generous support from individuals like you. You can learn more about how to become a guardian of free speech at cityclub.org. Today's forum was made possible through partnerships with the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy. The City Club would also like to welcome guests at the tables hosted by the Cleveland Foundation, List Cleveland, Merging Municipal Leaders of the City of North Olmsted, and the Cleveland Leadership Center. On Wednesday, July 23rd, we will have our third forum of our summer series, which will be a conversation with Ricky Smith, founder of Random Acts of Kindness Everywhere and owner of Something Good Social Kitchen, which is right across the street in Playhouse Square Plaza. We will be talking about what it means to do something good and how Ricky is supporting the community in positive and powerful ways. You can learn more about upcoming forums at cityclub.org. Again, that brings us to the end of today's program. Thank you again to Christine McIntosh, Gillian Prater-Lee, George McCarthy, and members and friends of the City Club. I am Tony Coyne. This forum is now adjourned.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.
The ideas expressed in City Club forums are those of the speakers and not of the City Club of Cleveland, IdeaStream Public Media, or their sponsors. Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream Public Media are made possible by PNC and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland, Incorporated.